Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you all had an excellent holiday. And now, my friends, we are back in business here with the High Elves versus Norsca. It's going to be Larry with a very elite High Elf build, so we are going to be coming in with what I believe is basic archers, but all the infantry are going to be elite. So triple Swordmaster, double Phoenix Guard, and Larry, of course, is going to be back here dropping the big heals. So if you're going to be coming in with these really expensive troops, things like Dragon Princes, Phoenix Guard, you're going to want some healing. And, that was kind of a common playstyle for the High Elves back in Warhammer 2. You would often see like defensive boxes with like Phoenix Guard and Larry kind of healing, or you'd see like big blobs of Dragon Princes roaming around the Fireborn, getting the Star of Avalorn, getting those heals, and really generating pretty good value. So the reason why I think the elite elves will work relatively well against Norsca is because Norsca loves to spam Marauder champions. Not spam them, but typically you'll see two or three of them in a lot of matchups. So having the Swordmasters there is kind of a unexpected counter. I think could work pretty well because most high elf players go with either Silverin and basic Spearmen with some Rangers and then get their value elsewhere. But I really do think there is some punch to be had with the elite high elf infantry. So double Swordmaster on the ground. If you guys haven't seen them, pretty awesome unit. And as far as like great weapon elite units go, they are really good. Their stats are insane. They also have a shield because apparently their martial prowess is so elite that they can like swat arrows out of the air with their swords, which is pretty cool. So we got three of those guys. Double Phoenix Guard. Obviously, Norsca has big things. There's going to be trolls, there's going to be mammoths, maybe Famir. So having the anti-large is really necessary because if you just come in with Swordmasters, you're going to get the troll toll, like the ice trolls or Famir, whatever. Any number of large targets like a mammoth is just going to dominate your front line and you're going to lose horribly. So that's pretty much it for my build. Pretty basic stuff. And for my opponent here, it is going to be Marauder champions mixed with the Norscan ice trolls, which will be scary. If the Norscan ice trolls are able to sit on top of the Swordmasters, well, just some kind of chaff hold them down like basic Marauders, that's really not going to be cost effective for me for sure. So it is Norscan ice trolls all across the sunset here. We do have Throg the Troll King, and it is going to be a Shaman Sorcerer of Metal, looking to maybe cast Plague of Rust on top of my elite troops, which is actually quite strong. Marauder champions are really good, but they don't have the best armor piercing values. So if you overcast like Plague of Rust on like a Halberd or something like that, these guys are going to start trading very cost effectively. Granted, I know Phoenix Guard do have some sort of physical resist. Yeah, it's like 30%. It's pretty serious. They're really tanky. Swordmasters do not, but again, they pack some pretty serious punch, and look at their stats, 55-49, and if you compare that to the Marauder Champion on the far side, the Marauder Champion is going to be 36-53, but again, the High Elves' high stat line is contingent upon their health. Once they do drop below a certain threshold, their stats will drop as well, so you have to be kind of privy to that. Now, we're on the Lost Temple of Sotek. There's going to be 3 objectives. We got 1, we got 3, and we got 2. So each of us have a home objective, but this is one of the more fast-paced domination maps that we do have. Everything gets going really quickly. You can bounce between all 3 objectives very fast, so the games often swing back and forth, and I think this map makes for some very epic games for sure. Now, reinforcements for my opponent, going to be summoning in some Beasts of Tashnar on the far side, as well as Marauder Horsemen, looking to maybe get some throwing axes on my elite troops, which would not like that. So in response, I summon out some Lothern Seaguard on this side, and I do also have some Reavers here just to kind of prevent my opponent from charging in and getting a bit of a freebie on me here. So we'll have to see how that all unfolds. Lothern Seaguard, teeing off into Marauder Champs, not going to do much damage, but they are elite, and we obviously wanted to shoot the trolls, but my opponent keeps kind of pulling them back, but here they do move forward a little bit, so I will take whatever value I can get. And ideally, if we can pick off a troll model, that's going to be pretty sweet because they regenerate. So if you kill the model, that caps that regeneration for that model. Undead obviously can resurrect things. Nurgle can resurrect through the Festering Stooges, but I think that's pretty much the only Nurgle unit that actually does resurrect. Aside from that, it's pretty much healing. And then tabletop, it's a little bit different, I guess. If you're playing Death Guard, you can't really resurrect the like Plague Marines, but if you're looking at like the Poxwalkers and the zombie type units, which are mortals actually, or I guess technically it's kind of somewhere in between, a little bit of a gray area. You can actually resurrect them in tabletop, so I'm surprised Nurgle doesn't have more like resurrection mechanics for their demons. Understandably, the mortals makes kind of sense since they're not like undead, but yeah, for those other units, I'm not sure why we don't see that. Could be kind of cool. So here we do have the Norscan Trolls, Marauders moving in, and on the far side we do have the Beasts of Tashnar and Horsemen looking to do a little bit of a big flank here. So it's going to be kind of nasty, and obviously very good awareness from my opponent. Attacking the Swordmasters with the Trolls here is going to be very nice, as they are really strong armor piercing. And the Phoenix Guard are going to be piling in to help out a little bit. And on this far side, we do use our Reavers to intercept this big charge. So Horsemen and Beasts of Tashnar will be able to win this fight 2v1. So this is a little bit dicey for me for sure. Not the best engagement, whereas on objective number 3, we have a pretty firm stranglehold, but overall my opponent is getting some really good engagements, getting Trolls on top of Swordmasters. Obviously, my heavy, slow infantry aren't going to be able to dictate the pacing of the battle. So what I have to do is use my magic supplements from Larry, like Frost Protection, to make these guys 73 melee defense will mitigate a ton of damage from 38 melee attack on these Trolls, right? So the Swordmasters will hold for a lot longer than they should, and then the Archers and Lothern Seaguard are able to take out the Trolls slowly. As far as this flank fight goes, it gets a little bit better. We do summon in another Reaver unit, which is able to hammer into the Horsemen. And here you can see these Norse controls are broken. And Larry comes in and drops a fat heal on the Swordmasters to try and stabilize them. Now that the Trolls are gone, this is where the Swordmasters can really shine. And even though their model count is lower, 66 of these bad boys with some healing support probably is going to be able to cut through a lot of these Marauder champions and basic Marauders and maybe even win this fight, which is pretty insane. I mean, Elite High Elf Infantry are no joke. Looking to value, 27 to 23, so we're pretty close in value, and you have to remember my opponent does have a lot of healing via these Norse controls. Some of them going to be moving into the Lothern Sea Guard, but the Lothern Sea Guard should be able to get their spears out and hopefully put up a good fight against them. Halberds on the objective, easily going to defeat Marauder champions, and that's what's cool about Phoenix Guard. They're kind of a hybrid unit, not hybrid unit, but they can function in that way, in that their stats are good enough that they can actually deal with like basic armor outside of large targets as well. And here the Swordmasters absolutely dominate the Marauders, not to be, no surprises there, and we do hold on to the objective. And the home objective is under our control as well. Now my opponent really pouring on the pressure. We do see some Condom Wolves coming in, the Skin Wolves moving, and the old Phoenix Guard are able to pile forth and deal with them rather effectively. I do think that High Elves have some of the best light skirmish cavalry in the game, or light cav, I should say, not skirmish cav. Reavers are just so damn cost effective, and here you can see they rat off the Beast of Tashnar and honestly might be able to turn around and put up a fight against the throwing axes. But the problem is my opponent reacts very well, pulls these Skin Wolves out, and is going to be able to kind of pick off these isolated cav. But you can see the value is just kind of increasing, and during the game it was funny. I felt like I wasn't microing a whole lot, but just like the good quality troops are just generating value for me like all over the battlefield. They're just fighting in these isolated pockets here, like the Swordmasters and the Phoenix Guard taking out the Marauder champions. Just all these little microcosms of engagements are just going so well. Now, I didn't mean to bring Larry on foot. She was supposed to be on horse, so she's going to be a little bit more vulnerable. She does kind of run away from Throg there. There was a big Troll Toll Legion of the Forest. We see Throg, we see some Norscan Ice Trolls, and they were able to break my Swordmasters with a little bit of Plague of Rust. Very nice, making those Marauder champions do quite a bit more damage. And here, obviously, I'm going to be punished for my Haggard blobbing, as we do get the Searing Doom coming down. Not that much damage, though. We did mostly dodge it. We got out of there, at a somewhat decent pace. But look at this. We actually had these Trolls come in pretty beat up, and look at how much damage they do. Yeah, the Norscan Trolls are no joke. 120 weapon strength. Most Trolls have 100. They do have a better stat line. I don't know about the HP and different stats, but for the most part, Lothern Sea Guard are able to hold, and the Trolls are just going to be bouncing into another Spear unit. I think it's because Lothern Sea Guard really don't have good melee damage output, so the Trolls are able to kind of heal through a lot of it, despite it actually connecting with them with the anti-large, but even still, Larry moving in. We see the Norse controls here looking like they're going to be in some danger. And now Falcon's favorite piece, it is going to be the dreaded Frostheart Phoenix. Now, I figured there would be blob fights, considering I have elite troops and my opponent's going to be kind of diving and having to fight on them. Let's get a Frostheart Phoenix. These things actually are really, I think, underrated. They do have a nice aura, so if you're expecting like a blob fight versus like various undead factions, maybe like vampire counts, I feel like having one wouldn't be a bad idea. Lower speed, it lowers base weapon damage and melee attack, and again, it is pretty tanky. It does have a ward save mechanic here at 10% currently, and is rather tanky as well with 80 armor and a pretty darn good stat. So coming in, gooning the Metal Caster, but this side is looking a little bit scary. I do have my elite units on the objective, but my opponent is able to get some Marauder Horseman throwing axes and isolate some elite units with their backs currently turned, so those throwing axes are going to be doing some, substantial damage. Not going to be a joke. 5,500 right here, as Throg and this big nasty blob are just bouncing around and pretty much killing everything they come into contact with. So really, it's going to come down to me trying to hold on this objective, getting the Frostheart Phoenix over here, seeing what we can get done. However, we did get some elite Phoenix Guard moving over here. I noticed my opponent was not defending the objective. It was pretty much all in on the other side here. So the Phoenix Guard do move up to the point. We're going to be trying to snake this one. It's probably not going to happen. The Marauder Spearmen and the Horsemen with throwing axes will be, the Spearmen won't do well, but the throwing axes will. And he could just kind of park the Spearmen on the back side of the objective, which is going to keep me from capturing this. And as I do lose models on the Phoenix Guard, he's going to be getting the capture weight. However, he chooses to engage in melee, which I was pretty happy about. It gives the Phoenix Guard a little bit of a fighting opportunity here as they get in and start just, cutting through these Marauder Spearmen. That's going to be a very lopsided matchup, even with the throwing axes there. Over here, this objective is looking very, very precarious as Throg and the Legion do move in, but this is where the elite High Elf Infantry really shine. Amazing holding power, really good leadership as the Phoenix Guard and Swordmasters moving in with the support of the Phoenix, lowering the melee attack and speed, and also providing a big terror route. So the High Elves do hold firm as the Norscan Barbarians are driven back. We see routes coming down from the Trolls. These Skin Wolves here are wavering, and more Trolls on the other side. But look at the stat line. You can see all those red stats that are being debuffed by the Phoenix right now. Doesn't have the fancy rebirth, but it tries. Larry also going to be coming in with an overcasted Foz protection. So the entire fighting core of High Elves here is going to be getting armor as well as melee defense. Star of Avalorn going down as well. And suddenly you just have this immovable brick of High Elves that are going to be fighting. Trolls are just routing left and right. And back on the home objective, we do see the Spearmen, Silver, and Guard coming in to hold down the point. Unfortunately, some Skin Wolves in my backfield are causing me some serious problems. And what was kind of cool about these Phoenix Guard here is even though they're not getting the objective, I mean, here they're actually getting the cap weight again because they've killed enough of these Spearmen, but my opponent is kind of allocating a fair amount of resources to trying to deal with them and, defend this back objective, wherein I can then, on the other sides, maybe get some victories that otherwise a couple other units that they may have been able to bring in would make a big difference. But we do lose the objective in the big Alpha Strike, but now we're going to be getting the capture weight back as the Phoenix is going to be chasing down Throg. Now, this isn't a great fight for me. The Phoenix obviously would probably lose this head-to-head, so I do realize this and pull back the Phoenix, and it's more of a big kind of terror centerpiece tank debuff beast. You don't want it to be like going off and, dueling an anti-large specialist, right? That's not going to be great. So some trolls routing off the edge of the map. These ones actually still had 12 of 16 models, and the other ones here I think were shattered, but even still I get some reavers and make sure to chase them off the battlefield. Chasing things off the battlefield is much more important in land battles than it is in domination, but there are times in domination with regenerating units, or like a lord or a mage, or things that are of very high value that typically you're going to be wanting to chase. Phoenix Guard still going like champs, holding back 2 Norscan infantry, including some Marauders, and they pretty much eaten an entire salvo of throwing axes, and they're still fighting, doing some good work. Spearmen here holding. Silver and Guard are on the job, going to be attacked by the Beasts of Tashnar, which are infantry size, so the anti-large spears won't be able to connect super efficiently. However, I mean, Silver and Guard still have good stats. 31 melee attack is like as good as a lot of aggressive units, right? So hopefully they'll be able to kind of hold this point. On the backside, Condom Wolves moving in. It is going to be the Armored Skin Wolves, which is a pretty good choice. High Elves do have a lot of anti-light shooting, like Archers, Lothern Sea Guard, Reavers, Silver Helms, Dragon Princes. They're all units that really do lack armor piercing, right? So coming in with the Armored Skin Wolves tech here, I think is very, very good. And the Skin Wolves going to be getting the Atomic Werewolf slaps onto the back of these guys, and we'll see how long they can hold for. I mean, that's pretty much what the High Elves are certainly quite good at. Phoenix Guard on the other side, fighting off a couple units, eating all the ammunition on the throwing axes, which probably gotten some pretty good value, only about 500 or 600. But this objective was pretty decisive. We were able to rout off most of the trolls, and Throg is on his way over now. But we've summoned in the heavy hitters, baby. Enough is enough, as the Fireborn are going to be couching their lances and preparing to maybe run into the Armored Skin Wolves. My opponent reacts pretty quickly and is able to get away there. But at the very least, it does stabilize the objective, which is the important thing, and the Fireborn should be able to fight here for quite some time. Really good micro, though. Horsemen bouncing in all directions, getting the throwing axes, but now we see Throg. We're like, all right, well, I guess we'll just go after Throg with a bunch of anti-large fire damage. And Throg here is going to be taking a little bit of a beating, but then we see the Skin Wolves and the Beasts of Tashnar coming in, so we have to kind of bounce away from Throg and make sure to meet their charge head on so we get our charge bonus and we connect with those units. So this is going to be a big, ugly blob fight here once again, but this is what like our entire epicenter of our strategy is around, right? Is these like blob fights with buffs and Larry coming in with Earthbloods and Star of Avalorns and all those different effects. And you can see the Norscans just kind of fold like a piece of paper here. Has the Marauder Horsemen run for the hills, throwing axes do circle around the back. Going to be getting some okay damage into the Phoenix here. The Phoenix does have the Attune to Magic, which I believe is based on my current Winds of Magic pool. So yeah, as it currently stands, it's not getting its ward save, which, in the late game, I guess it could fall off a little bit. And the fire damage also from the other Phoenix could maybe be a little bit more pertinent, but I really do like the big AoE debuffs and the tankiness of this Phoenix. I felt like it was relatively useful this game. But again, maybe the fire bombardments could be better and the fire damage against Throg and against Skin Wolves and things like that. Let me know your thoughts. If you guys ever had success with the Frostheart Phoenix, I'd be quite curious to hear your tales. Now, looking at the value, 13.8 to 11.2, both sides do have healing, but considering my healing and how substantial it is with Larry, I'm certainly quite a bit further ahead. I'm probably closer to like 15k if you just kind of average that out. And granted, my opponent has some troll healing, so maybe like 700 or 800 there, but we're easily ahead by like 2,000 or 3,000 value here. And yeah, Throg is going to get surrounded now, and he is going to be taken down by all these Fireborn, and that's going to be some big, big damage. That's basically going to be the backbreak, and that's a really nice play. Beautiful Searing Doom. Oh my goodness, look how much damage that did to the Fireborn. That was crazy. But Throg's in serious danger. Larry's kind of cleaning up. Reaver's chasing down the Cav here. And now we can kind of just push to the back objective here as we do summon in some more Reavers, Lothern Sea Guard, and Spears. And we're just going to be pushing Norsca into their backfield. And even if we don't get the objective, if we can force the fight to take place back here, that's going to be quite big as the Frostheart Phoenix does take down the big Troll Man. And once again, Phoenix just kind of tanking the entire blob of Norskins, getting terror routes. I do actually get pushed back there a little bit. But, Spears and Lothern Sea Guard just slowly moving up. Norsca is just actually able to close the gap in value a little bit, but they just don't have the stopping power really to get these two objectives back. And you can see it's almost a point of no return. Not quite a single cap situation, but it's going to be getting there pretty quickly. Lothern Sea Guard holding very, very well. Skin Wolves on the side moving in, Horsemen charging, but these are all spear units. They're going to be more than happy to hold this as the Norskins are broken here once again, and the cavalry just bouncing back and forth and hammering all these different units. Nice Searing Doom going down. Does once again hit the Swordmasters, but we do summon the elite units, and you can see my opponent's really, really super solid micros. What's been keeping them in this game, just like evading like really bad engagements for the most part. But I think a lot of it was tricky, right? We had the counters against what they brought. We had the Swordmasters for the Marauder Champions. We had the Phoenix Guard for the Trolls. We had really good healing to kind of compensate for bad engagements, and that was pretty much it, as that is going to be game blouses. So let's take a look at the breakdown. For all of you High Elf enjoyers out there, there you go. They are not bad. And of course, the Elite Infantry did good, which is really cool to see. I mean, there was magic to punish the Elite Infantry too. That's kind of one of the common arguments against Elite Infantry is that, oh, magic's just going to kill them. Well, yeah, you know, Buna would have been a little bit more punishing, but you can, when somebody casts a Buna, you can respond with the Star of Avalorn, and it will often mitigate much of that damage. So, you know, High Elves at least do have some answers against that. But yeah, Elite Infantry doing work. Really, really good High Elf Skirmish Cav, or Light Cavalry, insane. 1,700, 1,300. Fireborn did pretty good too. 2,200, certainly paid for themselves. And the Bird, not bad, 1,500. This is a cool army as well. Marauder Champions, I think if the Elf players go with like a Spear Archer kind of wall, it can really struggle because Marauder Champions just never die. So I do think you need some like good dedicated armor piercing against Norsca. Even though they're mostly a lightly armored faction, Marauder Champions are just so common. And also Armored Skin Wolves too, right? So having that armor piercing is quite good. GG, well played. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Once again, happy holidays. Hope you guys all had a good one. And we'll see you on the other side.